Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to my channel. This Wednesday, as I mentioned in Monday's video, if you watch that, I'm going to show you how to make the little blocks we made last week or something along those lines into a box. Of course you could use this to make a box out of any kind of squares, but I've made this one, which I did again show in Monday's video, with using the applique method from last week. Also, just to show you that I am better at it than appeared last week. My circles are not bad on here. So I did a 4 patch and I did the applique on opposite corners and just stitched the circle on the other 2 corners, and they're all the same. And then I've put them in such a way so that it sort of zigzags. Kind of looks like full moons and new moons. Anyway, but the main thing really that I wanted to share was this lovely way of joining with crochet. Now if you're not a crocheter, don't be scared. I'm sure you could have a go. It's one simple basic crochet stitch. And this was inspired by Alessandra, and I'll link to her Instagram below. If you don't follow her already, do go and have a look at her beautiful work. She's a keen fan of Wonky Wednesday, and she was making some of her squares into boxes and joining them in this way, so I wanted to have a go. It's called fusion quilting. It is a thing, you know, it is a thing to join fabric squares with crochet, but I just thought her boxes were beautiful. So anyway, I've made this one. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to make a little tiny one. So I've got this far with it. Don't worry, I'll talk you through the whole thing. Sorry, Stells, can you stop it? Sorry, there's something under the rug and she's got her nose under there and she's snorting. And it's a bit irritating. So I've made these 4 little squares. So you see my box is going to be tiny. I think they're 3 or 3¼ inches. That one's super wonky, in the spirit of Wonky Wednesday. So I did the same applique. I trapuntoed it, I stuffed it from the back. And then I've done some of the embroidery stitches from, they're still hanging on in my brain from the Crazy Patchwork Week. So there I did fly stitch, little blue fly stitches with a straight stitch and a French knot. And on this one I did some blanket stitch and then put straight stitches and a French knot. I used the same 3 colours but just kind of alternated them, you know, in how I used them. The knots were always red just to unify. That's a super wonky circle. So these are still, I'm still obsessing over Jerry's dots. You know, they are addictive. So anyway, so you'll need 4 squares for your sides of your boxes. Can be any size you want. You know, my bigger box I think is 5. I think they're 5. I think those are 2½ inch small squares, so that's 5 inches there to there. And then the crochet obviously adds about 3/4 of an inch per join. The way I did it anyway. So I need to make a bottom. So I thought I'll make the bottom and get it up to this stage, and then I'll show you the crocheting it together. So I've got here my card template. So this is my 3, I think it's 3¼ yeah, 3¼ inch square. I just happen to have this, it's a bit of file folder, so you know, I went with it. I think I was looking for 3 or 4 inches and found this. So I've cut myself a piece of wadding, leftover scrap, which is the exact size of my template. And then I've got 2 pieces of cloth. Now for these I use this dark purple that I appliqued onto. So I cut myself the square, and these are a good inch bigger, so I've got ½ inch all around. So I cut myself the square, I did my applique and my trapunto, and then I put my wadding, and then I did my embroidery up through the wadding. And when I'd done that, then I put the backing square on. Hope that makes sense. So there's no stitches showing here, but I did embroider through the wadding square. Hope that makes sense. I don't think that really matters. I just thought it's handy to hold the wadding together with a bit of stitching. So I've got my 2 squares, so one for the inner and one for the outer. So I'll just lay my template on and just put a crease. You could do this around the wadding, but I just find that the cardboard gives a better edge. I'm finger pressing. I'm not ironing. No surprises there. You could iron if you wanted to. Just make sure it's somewhat central. So I'm not worrying about the corners at this point. I'm just pressing the sides with my thumbnails. And I'll do that with both pieces. you want to choose sort of a cottony type thing, you know, something fairly fine. This is slightly higher thread count than I would normally like to work with, but it's okay. It's just for the lining. I don't have to do much hand stitching in it. And it was a lovely purple. It was a little scrap of something. So I'm just finger pressing that all around. Like so. And then I take my wadding. Some wadding has a right and wrong side. This is a poly cotton blend, I think. It's what I used to use years and years ago when I was a normal quilter. And it's got a scrim in it, and the scrim is like a stabilizing layer. And you can see if you look at it, which is the scrim side. I can't probably show you on camera, but I can see tiny little sort of dimples on one side, and the other side's much fluffier. The fluffy side is what you put up onto the top of your work, because then your quilting stitches cause the, you know, the hills and valleys in that fluff. And then the flat side goes to the back of your work, so the back of your work's flat. Just in case you didn't know and you're interested, if you're a quilter. Right, so I'm just going to put that on there, and then I'm going to fold over my edges and I'm going to pin them. Like I said, you know, you could have not done the finger pressing on this piece. And again, I'm just going to do the two opposite edges first, I think. And trying not to pull it too tight, because then it might start dishing. We had that a little bit when we did the Quilt As You Go hexagons. Mine certainly dished a bit, and I heard other people reporting dishing. But you just don't want to, you know, pull it super tight. And I think that's why it's not a bad idea to finger press it on the template, which won't bend as easily. And then just let that fold lay on the edge of the wadding rather than, excuse me, pulling it up. So then I'm going to fiddle with the corners, just tuck that in and fold that over. And you can put another pin if you like, but if you've got a good creasy cloth, a cloth that holds a crease, I'm going to fiddle with that corner the same, just put my thumbnail in. A tractor going by outside, I don't know if you can hear that. And I'm going to fiddle with this corner. And then the fourth one. And I then, when I've done that, I do the invisible baste around the edge. You could leave the pins in and then pin the other bit on and, you know, adjust the pins as you go, but I just find it less fiddly, just put in the extra step. I've said it before on many occasions, till you're bored with hearing me say it, to just put invisible baste in. I'm just getting some of this grey out of my lovely DMC box. Whoops, sorry about the clangy ruler. I will need that in a minute. So I don't know how Alexandra, sorry. In Portuguese you say Alexandra, an X is a sh. I don't know how she did her, I only saw her pictures on Instagram. I asked her if she minded if I, you know, took her idea and ran with it. And of course she didn't, because she's lovely. So I then had a bit of a look online, because I can do stitching. I hope you've noticed. And I can do crochet. I don't think I've shown you any crochet yet, but I can. But I'd never combined the two before. So I had a look and I came across this concept of fusion quilting, where you make sort of quilted squares with finished edges, and then you join them with crochet. Invisible baste, in case you don't know, if you're new here, is a tiny little stitch on the front and a bigger stitch on the back, and I'm just going to do that all the way around the edge. Yeah, and the way I saw it done everywhere, and I'll hear from Alexandra if this is what she does, is by doing a blanket stitch, because you need to put a stitch into the fabric to crochet into. I saw another thing with fleece where they were poking holes in the fleece and crocheting through that. Wasn't really something that I really liked the look of, to be honest. But it did give me ideas for crocheting around paper. There might be some of that happening soon. And I know there's an artist called Suzanne Boyer, something like that, German. I'm sorry, you can tell me the pronunciation. Well, no, you can't really tell me a pronunciation, can you? It's B-A-U-E-R. Is it Bauer? Who crochets around and over leaves. And I didn't have a go last week when we were stitching on leaves, because it's not something I've done. But Alessandra also sent me a post of hers from a couple of years ago, I think. So if you have a good old look through her feed, you'll see some beautiful work. I think it was from 2 years ago, where she had crocheted round leaves and onto leaves as well, and also done stitched little shells onto leaves. And if you don't follow her on Instagram, then you should, because she does beautiful work. Right, that's 2 sides done. This whole process is quite time consuming. There are several steps to it, the way I'm doing it. I'm certain there are different ways. But as always, you just get my way. And you can take from it what you like and leave what you don't, and put your own spin on it and all that. I love seeing people put spin on it. I love people telling me about spins they put on it down below, because then I get tips as well. You know, down below in the comments. But anyway, so you need to put stitching in. So I started that thought about 10 minutes ago. You need to put stitching to crochet through. And what I saw mostly used everywhere was blanket stitch. So you do your blanket stitch around the edge, and then, you know, the blanket stitch makes that little bar, and then you crochet through that little bar. Well, I did that on one whole side of that bigger box that I showed you, the black and white one. And I didn't like the look of the legs of the blanket stitch against the edge of the crochet. Might have been because I used pale cream thread on the black, so it was really spiky and obvious. If I'd used black, it probably wouldn't have been, you know, as noticeable against the black cloth. But then I thought, well, why not use a different stitch? So I am using back stitch, so that's what I'm going to show you how I did that. But just, you know, equally you could use blanket stitch. And I've got back to the beginning. Now I can leave that attached because I can use that in a minute, so I'm just going to put it in there. So now I take my other square and I'm going to whip stitch it onto this, but I need to fold my edges. So all I do is on my crease lines, I just make one corner correct, you know, neat, get rid of U, like that, and then match that corner, not worrying about the rest for now, to that corner. And the other thing I try to do is, you see how this fold is going that way and this fold is going that way? That's what I want. I don't want both folds going the same way like that on that edge. Do you see what I mean? I think it's neater if you've got one fold going one way and one the other. And then when you're whip stitching, you can push that one little seam down in slightly so it doesn't show on the outside. I mean, you're not going to see it when you've crocheted your box together, but you know, sometimes I'm super finicky and sometimes I'm utterly slapdash. So I'm just matching the two edges. And tuck that corner in, do you see? So now I've got the fold going the opposite way to that fold. I hope that's clear what I mean. If it doesn't bother you, then don't bother. And then that crease, match that along there. On these little short ones, I don't need to put extra pins. If you had a bigger piece, maybe you need to pin more. And then that fold needs to go in there like that. All matching. And that fold. And see this one here, if I fold it there like that, those two creases are the same side. So I'm going to push it out again, fold that under and fold that in. See what I mean? So I've got like that. Hope you can see that. Hope I'm not creeping off too far to the left all the time. My chair's moved slightly. Right, so now that's done. Just put a final pin in that corner. All I'm going to go and do now, as if I was doing English paper piecing or, you know, one of those type things, I'm going to just go and whip stitch all around the edge. I've done my whip stitching. Can you see? Can you see? Just, I did use the purple in the end just for consistency. So I've got this little padded bottom. Sorry. Briefly, just as an aside, sidebar, Jerry would say, if you wanted to make this into a rice bag, at this stage, or before I whip stitched, I would have at that point inserted the 4 tabs. If you've made rice bags or seen my rice bag video, you know what I mean. You need a little loop of cloth, one on each of the 4 sides, to thread your ties through to pull them up. So if you want to make a rice bag at this stage, on the top side of your edges, you would trap your loop in between your whip stitching and then proceed, you know, with the rest of what I'm going to show you. I'll do one at one point and then I'll show you. Right, so in order to, and now I need to put my lines of back stitch around the edges so that I can do my crocheting through. Now you want an even number of stitches really, because when you join the 2 sides of crochet together later, you want to have the same. We're going to crochet through a stitch this side and a stitch that. So in order to get the same number, I used a template. You could also just go for it and you know, fudge your crochet, add stitches and take them away. But anyway, so super simple. I just got a little piece of paper that's the same length as my square, and I'm going to get my ruler. Now I used millimeters. 5 millimeters is about the smallest your stitch should be. A 1/4 inch is probably also fine. If you didn't have millimeters and you wanted to do 5 millimeters, it would be about 3/8 rather than a full 1/4. I'm going to use this, which is a 2.5 millimeter crochet hook. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is in US size. This was in my DMC box, so this is Tante Gilbert's hook. But you know, a smallish hook, and I'm going to use this vintage cotton. It doesn't say what weight it is, but looking at it, it's about the weight of an 8-weight thread. You see that against my hand. So you just need some thickish cotton or, you know, thread to crochet with. It doesn't have to be proper crochet cotton as long as it's that sort of thickness. So that's an 8-weight Valdani, so that's about the thickness. That one thing of that wouldn't be enough probably for a box this size. I don't know exactly how much I would need, but just bear that in mind. You need a, you know, a reasonable amount. I'm going to use this. So to make my template, all I'm doing is I'm going to get my little cardboard in just to rest it on because it's a soft surface. Is making little 5 millimeter marks across one edge of this with a pencil. So just every 5 millimeters or 3/8 of an inch if you're going with imperial. I'm just making a little tick mark. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah. I couldn't find the one I made for the other 4 sides. It's a little scrap of paper, it's got thrown away somewhere. So anyway, I'm making a new one. That's it. And then all I'm going to do with that then is pin him to the side, leaving myself about, I'm going to stitch my back stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. So I'm going to lay my template sort of a good 1/4 inch down so it's not in the way, but it's close enough that I can see. And I'm going to put a couple of pins in it. Now to stitch my back stitch, I'm going to use this because it's purple and then you won't see it. So I like the idea of not really seeing the back stitching. This was the only purple I had, and this is a 16 weight, so it's quite fine. You want something sturdy. Ideally, one of those 8-weight threads I think would be the best to crochet through, because you want something sturdy. You're going to put a little bit of strain on it. 2 strands worked okay. I've just had to be careful that I made sure I got both of my strands when I was crocheting. So I've got it doubled and knotted. And the other thing is you want to be really sure that you anchor it well at the beginning. Ask me how I know. I got my hook under the first stitch and pulled through to crochet and my knot popped out. So you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to just come in somewhere in the, you know, in between the stitching there and come up about where I want to start. Now what I was doing was I was making my first stitch slightly bigger, so that I start 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. My knot's not going to go in now, it doesn't matter, I'll just trim it. Most of this will be hidden when you crochet inside the box. So then I'm just going to take a back stitch just to lock it up into this 1/8 of an inch boundary that I'm leaving. Just to be sure it doesn't pull out when I start crocheting and that it's not in the way of my crochet. Like that. And then I'm going to, looking at my next tick mark is here. Make sure I take a nice 5mm or 3/8 stitch, coming up again, looking at my next tick mark, which is here. Can you see what I'm doing? Any smaller than that and you'll struggle to get your hook through. So you see my first stitch is slightly bigger. I'm sorry it's purple on purple. So then back stitch, I go back down into that same hole, and then I come forward and then come up where my next tick mark is. And that way you get, it's not so much about getting the stitches consistent size. That doesn't really matter as long as they're big enough to get your crochet hook through. It's just about making sure you get an even number of stitches, you know, sorry, the same number of stitches per side. With crochet you can always do a lot of fudging. If you're a crocheter you'll know what I mean. You can put 3 stitches in instead of 2, or you can miss a stitch out or whatever. But I just thought I'd show you, you know, how to be somewhat accurate. That stitch is slightly small there. I can still get my hook through it, can I? Yeah, I can still get my hook through it. And don't pull them up super tight either. You want them snug so that the crochet doesn't, you know, pull them right up away from the cloth, but you don't want them super tight because you can't get your hook through. So just because I've got it double, it's going to play me up. Just, you know, gently laying on the surface of the cloth, not tight, not loose. And I'm going to do that all the way along. Oh, come on, don't be annoying. What I should have done was thread both ends of the thread through the eye of the needle and not pulled it through and knotted the double end. And that's what, and I know this. I know this, but this is the triumph of hope over experience. Hopefully it'll settle down as I get going. So I'm just back stitching, keeping an eye on those tick marks, pulling that back if I'm pulling too tight until I get to the other end. And when I get to the last stitch on this side, whoops, don't do that. If you fear that you've made a stitch a bit small, have your hook sitting at the side and just try your hook through it to see if it'll fit. And if it won't, then, you know, pull your stitch out and do it again. So that's my second to last stitch. So again, my last stitch, I'm going to make it slightly longer. This is just how my measurements have worked out. It might be different for you. So that I get to the 1/8 of an inch from the edge of my next side. Do you see what I mean? So this last stitch is going to be slightly bigger. And then my last stitch I go through, I go back and forwards and come out the same hole. And I just leave my needle there, get my template off, turn my template round, pin it back on, and away I go again. So I'm going to do that all the way around and then I'll be back again. So I'm just coming back round to the beginning, or the end, whichever way you look at it. And just to say as well, my back stitches are not going through to the other side. They're only into the top cloth and probably a bit into the wadding as well, because I don't want them to show on the back. I didn't say that before. So I'm just going to make my last back stitch and bring my needle out somewhere towards the edge in that 1/8 of an inch, let's call it a seam allowance, and then again make sure I really end that thread off strongly and well so it doesn't pull out when I start crocheting against it. I'm going to do a couple of back stitches on the spot. Let's get that template off now, I don't need that anymore. And then I'm going into this area here because that will all be hidden. And I'm just going to bury my thread somewhere inside, making sure I haven't come through. And I might just do one more little back stitch and bury it a bit further, just for good measure. Alright, there we go. And then I'll cut it off. And then we're ready to crochet. Now, I'm going to use what is in the UK called double crochet, although I use US terms, which is single crochet. I'm going to assume you can't crochet, so if you can, just, you know, ignore me. So all I'm going to use is single crochet, a slip stitch and a chain, the 3 basic crochet stitches. So I'm going to start in a corner here. I'm going to put my hook, and if I lay it on its side it goes through more easily, and use my thumbnail, that's where all my endings of threads were and everything, and just push my hook under that first stitch. Come on, behave yourself. There we go, like that, and make sure, in my case I've got 2 strands. I would really recommend that if you've got something thick enough, I wouldn't use an embroidery floss by the way, I don't think it's strong enough. I think a cotton pearl or something like that is what you need. So I've got my hook under my 2 strands of thread. I'm going to put my tail going over to the right over the hook, and then I put my little finger round the yarn, and then like that, so clockwise, can you see? And then my pointer finger under the yarn, and then I'm going to hold that tail behind with my middle finger and my thumb, and then pull that loop of thread through the back stitch. I'm just going to pull myself some more off so it doesn't jump about all over the place. So now there's the tail. I'm just going to leave that there until the end, when I'll deal with it then. And then I'm going to, with my hook, pick up a loop of yarn, and this is a chain stitch. So I'm coming under the yarn from left to right and hooking it and pulling it through that loop. And don't pull that super tight, and there's a little chain stitch. So that counts as my first single crochet in that back stitch. So now I want a second one. I'm going to put 2 single crochets in every back stitch. So I'm going to go back into my back stitch with my hook, which is now much easier because I've pulled it up a bit. Get a loop of the yarn and pull it through the stitch. And now I've got 2 loops on my hook. And then I'm going to hook the yarn again and pull that loop through both of those loops on my hook. That's a single crochet. So that's 2 in that stitch because the chain counts as the first one. So now I'm going to put 2 in the next back stitch. So I'm going under the strand and pulling it through, under the strand and pulling it through both loops for a single. And now I need another one, so through the back stitch, under the strand of yarn, pull it through, 2 loops on the hook, under the strand of yarn, pull it through again, and I'm keeping them a little bit loose. And I'm going to do that all the way along in every back stitch, 2 single crochets. 1, 2. If you've never crocheted before, it takes a little bit of practice to get the tension right over your hand. Maybe just, well, I'll just go for it, you know. I found crochet very forgiving. If you're a knitter, then I think you'll find crochet easy, although it's different. You know, this simple crochet, I mean, there's more complex crochet. It's just getting the tensioning around your hand. I hold my hook in a weird way, I know. Most people hold their hook like a pen, I hold it like a knife. I have no excuses, I don't know why. Some of them are a bit tight, you know. I think if you did 1/4 inch stitches, back stitches, you'd have less trouble. but I have to be consistent because I did 5mm on my other squares. And I got to 2 crochets per stitch, a little bit by trial and error, because what you want to end up with is a line of crochet that's a similar tension naturally as the piece of cloth. So you don't want it pulling up, but you don't want it too loose either. So it might be that if you've got a different, if you do a different size stitch, so you have less back stitches, or you've got thicker or thinner yarn that you're crocheting with, all those variables, it might be that you have to make an adjustment. And you don't have to have the same number of stitches for every back stitch. It might be that you do 3 stitches in every other stitch and 2 stitches in the ones in between. Do you see what I mean? But you just need to make sure that you end up with the same number of stitches along every side of your square, and that the line of crochet lays flat. I'll show you when I get to this end. Whoops, pulled my loop off. What I mean. I have no idea where it's vintage, this cotton that I'm crocheting with. I have no idea where it came from. It's got a French label, so it must have come here with something. I've sometimes bought kind of, mixed bags of things on flea markets. I suspect it's been in one of those. One, 2. That's the last one on that side, 1, and then I'll show you 2. So I'll just pull that loop big so it doesn't pull out. So now you see it's wanting to turn inwards, but that doesn't matter, it'll turn out on the next round. So there, do you see how it's laying kind of flat? It's not pulling the fabric in like that, and it's not, the crochet's not sort of coming out. So that's how I knew that was the right amount of stitches. And then if you look along this top row here, you see every one of these little V-shaped loops that are linking. It's like when you do chain stitch when you're embroidering, is a crochet stitch. So if ever you need to count your stitches, that's what you count, those loops. So I've come to this end, so now I need to get around the corner. I'll just get my loop back on the hook. Come on you go. So to get around the corner, I'm just going to do 2 chains. So like I did the chain to start with, I'm just going to do 2 chains, 1, 2, and that's enough to get me around the corner. And then I'm going to go into the first stitch on the next side, which again I've made too small. Got it. And off I go again, doing 2 single crochets in every stitch. So I'm going to do that all the way around, doing chain 2 in the corners and 2 single crochets in every back stitch until I get back to the beginning, and then I'll come back and show you what I'll do next. Okay, so I've done my 2 single crochets in every back stitch all the way around, and my chain 2s to go around the corners, and I've come up to my last corner. So I'm going to do my chain 2 again, 1, 2, to get me around the corner, and now I'm going to join it with a slip stitch to where I started. Now do you see that first little chainy thing coming up out of there, that first stitch? I'm just going to get my hook under the 2 bars of that V. That's why you don't want to pull them too tight. When I first started crocheting, I was always pulling too tight. I don't know if that's a thing, but you really need to try and be loose with it. And then I'm just going to get that strand of yarn, pull it through under the stitch, and then through the loop on my hook. No more yarn overs or anything. And that is a slip stitch. So now I've been round once and I'm joined back at the beginning. So now what I then did, you could now just join that straight away and you'd have a much narrower bit of crochet, but I went round again. So again with single crochet. So I'm in that first stitch with my slip stitch, so I need to do a chain 1 to count for a single crochet, and then I'm going to go into the next stitch. I hope you can see, I'll point with my pencil. You see here I'm in this stitch, you see it's been pulled up slightly. So now I want to go into this next stitch here with my hook and make another single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way around into every stitch. Apologies if you know how to crochet and you're going, yeah, this part is not for you. So I'm going under every little V, putting a loop through, and so pull through every stitch. And just pay attention, if you're new to crochet, as to how it looks. It's again like learning to read your knitting. I talked about in the sock knitting videos. It's reading everything, it's listening to it. You know, and I've talked about listening to the cloth and all that. It's the same, it's paying attention. Paying attention to the fact that some of my stitches are tighter than they should have been. I'll just go along this one side and show you what I do at the corner. Excuse me. And then I'll do the rest off camera. And I'm doing 1 stitch per stitch now. I'm not doing 2 stitches per stitch. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. So I'm just doing 1 single crochet into every single crochet. You could, of course, if you're a crocheter, experiment with all kinds of other crochet stitches. And not only for joining, just as borders around things, you know. I mean, if I knit a blanket or a shawl or something, I often put a crocheted edge around it. But you could equally do the same around a piece of stitch work, a crochet border of, you know, a fancy one, not just plain old single crochet. Right, coming up to the end. Whoops. Now, as you're coming along to the end, it's very easy to miss the last stitch. So again, just pay attention. There's a stitch. They kind of come up and bend over the way they're going. I hope it's focused. So there's a stitch. I need to go into that one. And then, do you see, I'm in there. Now the next space that's coming up, I shouldn't be using a pencil, I'm penciling on my thing, is my 2 chain there. So that's my corner. So I need to do something different there because I need to go up and along. So I'm going to do a single crochet right in under that chain into that lovely big inviting hole there. Single crochet. And then I'm going to chain 2 again for that corner, you know, so I've got something to bend me around the corner, and then I'm going to do another single crochet into that same chain space. So then I've got myself, if I show you on these, do you see, and I've got myself a nice little corner. That there is the space I just made. If I put my hook in there, do you see? Do you see? Do you see? If I just stretch it up a bit so you can see, that's the little space I just made, and those 2 extra chains just get you up and across. So I'm going to finish doing that all the way around back to the beginning, and then I'll come back and show you the joining process. Okay, I hope we're all right because I brought you in a little bit lower because I just looked back at the last bit and I think it was quite hard to see. So I'm back round to the beginning. In my last corner I've done my single crochet, 2 chain single crochet, and now I'm going to slip stitch again to the first stitch that I did here. So go under that first little V that I can see there. Come on, in you go. Pull up a loop. It's a bit tight because it's the chain. And then pull that through there, and I'm joined. So this is the right side. This is what I'm going to refer to as the right side. The wrong side is where you see your whip stitched edge of your cloth. So then I'm going to take my first of my side pieces and put it right, and so that's the right side, obviously with the applique on it. Put it right sides together. And now basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet all the way along again, but I'm going to go through the corresponding stitch on this piece and the corresponding stitch on that piece. Now they want to curl in, so you have to kind of curl them out so that you can see. And you see the little V's. See the little V's along the edge? Do you see they want to curl in? This is kind of easier to do than to show you, but I'll do my best. So I'm already round the corner, so I'm going to leave the corner on this new square that I'm joining until I come back round again. And I'm going to find the first stitch on this top side of it. Now I'm going to take my hook out of that loop, leave that loop big, and then I'm going to find the first stitch here. So there's the chain in the corner, and so there's the first stitch right next to it. So I'm going to get my hook under that stitch, and then I'm going to go back through the loop and pull the loop back up, and then I'm going to pull that loop with my hook through that stitch, and now they're joined together. So now it's exactly as if we were single crocheting before, only we're going through 2 stitches. So to start with, again, I'll do the chain 1, and that counts as your first single crochet. It kind of gets you up onto the next row, that's the idea of it. And then I was putting my middle finger in between, and then I was holding it like that so that I could then with my thumb pinch it. Now it's a bit fiddly, has to be said. And then find that stitch on this first side and get your hook through it. And then find the first stitch on the other side and put your hook through it. Get hold of it, get your tension right, pat your head, rub your tummy. And then just single crochet through both of those stitches together. So pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then get the next one, hook through, and then the next one, hook through, pull the loop through, single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way along to the other side. Oops. And then I'll come back and show you what I do when I get to the end. Okay, so that first one's joined. Sorry, I was just auditioning which one I wanted next. I'll pull the loop up just to show you. So this is the right side, so there you see my lovely line of crochet joining it, and there's the wrong side, and on the wrong side you see you get this ridge, and that's why I did it right sides together. Now if you like that ridge on the right side, you could do it wrong sides together, but I prefer it on the inside. And also I find then when it's turned as a box, that little ridge just gives it some structure. So I lay it out. I always lay things out, otherwise I get them wrong. And then I've decided that my next one's going to be this one. And I'm going to join the same way as when we made the other box with the Yorkshire fried egg, the Yorkshire rose, sorry, and the rice bag. I'm going to join the 4 sides first to the base like this, so it's an exploded box. So I'm going to now join this one, and then that one, and then that one, and then when I get right round again I can join them up the sides, and then I'll have to break threads and restart and so on. But anyway, to join the next one I just wanted to show you the corner. So again, put them right sides together. So all I did, I haven't done anything in the corner here yet. Actually, I need to do that first. So I'm coming along this edge. I've single crocheted in my last stitch. And now I'm going to do my last single crochet into this corner chain. So through that chain, and single crochet. Now I'm not going to do any chain ones or anything. I found it kept the corner neater and tighter if I didn't do the chain one. So I've just done 1 single crochet into that corner. So now I'll open it up, and I want to join this one, the corner of this one, to the corner of the base piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is just slip stitch myself into the corner of the base. So I'm going across, making sure I'm in the middle of the frame, going into the chain space in the corner of the base with my hook, pulling the yarn through and pulling the yarn through again just for a slip stitch to get me in the right place. And then I'm pulling that loop big, getting my new piece the right way around. I think because it's wonky I wanted the lower bit at the bottom. And then I'm going to go through the chain space in the corner of that one with my hook, and then go back into my loop, pull that through, and now that's joined. And then off I go again. So I do my chain 1 to count as my first single crochet, and then single crochet my way through both stitches, that one on this side and that one on the other side. Single crochet. So I'm going to go all the way along there, and then I'm going to join the other two in exactly the same way, and then I'll come back and show you going up the side. Okay, so I'm back round to the beginning. So now I need to, do you remember we didn't join the corner at the beginning, so we need to join that now. So I just do that in exactly the same way with a slip stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch myself into the corner of the bottom piece, into that chain space there in that corner. Sorry, that's not the chain space, that's the chain space. So slip stitches through and through. What's happening there? That's right. And now I'm going to put this first one again back right sides together. Whoops. Pull that loop up. It's exactly the same thing, only we just have to finish off that that last corner. Go back through that chain. Come on, behave yourself. There we go. And back through the loop. Tension it up and slip stitch it through. And then I am going to chain just to lock that all together there now. So just one chain and then flip it out. So now I'm going to, while I'm here, I'm going to join up these two sides. So I'll just pull my loop big a minute so I can get them together. So just right sides together. Get my loop back so I don't lose it. Turn it round. Match it up. And now the first place that now I'm going to go is the corner space of this piece. Come here. So that chain space of this square into there, and then into the chain space of the other square that I'm joining it to, into there, and do a single crochet. And then it's exactly the same process then into the next stitch along with your hook, corresponding stitch on there, single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way up the side to join the side, and then when I get to the end I'll come back and show you how I finish off. Okay, so I've gone all the way up my side and I've just got my corner chain space left, so I'm just going to do one single crochet into those two chain spaces just to join that up, single crochet, and then I'm going to do a chain 1, pull my loop big, cut my thread leaving about a 6-inch tail, and then carry on just pulling that loop all the way through and gathering it up. And that's a bit loose at the top, but I'll sew that in later and it'll be fine. So that's my one corner done. And you see it makes the corner quite neat and tidy. So now I need to do my other 3 sides. So again, just with it turned inside out, right sides together, pick a corner, any corner. These other 3 corners are all joined here. So I'm going to go through I haven't got any yarn at the moment, I'm going to go through this corner chain space with my hook, through that corner chain space with my hook, get my yarn. Some crocheters start with a slip knot or whatever. If that's your habit, then you go for it. Pull it through. Make sure I've got a tail to sew in at the end. And then single crochet. Sorry, chain one. And then get my two sides matched up. And then away you go again, exactly the same as before, all the way up to the top, single crocheting through, you know, the same stitch each side. Finish off in the same way. Do that with all the sides. But then when I get to the last side, I don't break it off at the end. I do one line of single crochet around the top just to neaten it up. So I'll come back and I'll show you that once I've done all the sides. Okay, so I've joined my last side. I'm still attached. All I've done is single crochet into that last corner space. I haven't done any chains or anything. So now I'm going to pull that loop up big so it doesn't come out, and I'm going to pop my box the right way out. It's super cute. It's super cute. And it's quite sturdy. I'll get rid of some of these tails. Where's my loop? That's my loop. With that attached, get all those in. Deal with those afterwards. So there's my little box. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? Now it's kind of a bit wonky around the top, and I know it's Wonky Wednesday, but we can straighten that up a little bit. Now what I found with this one, which was maybe even more exaggerated because it was bigger, was that it kind of splayed a bit round the top. So what I did was I did some decreasing, which I just guessed and tried and saw. Again, because yours might be different sizes and your materials might be different, you know, your hook and your crochet and everything might be different for you, but crochet is super easy to pull out. You just pull it back to the, you know, the last loop and put your hook in and you're good to go again. So I'm coming out here. I'm going to chain one to get myself up onto my next row, and now I'm going to single crochet into the next space that I can see, and I think I'm going to do a single crochet into 2 stitches and then skip a stitch. So 1, 2, and then skip 1 and go into the next one. And I'm going to do that all the way around, and that will pull the top edge in slightly, hopefully enough. 1, 2, and skip a stitch. 1, 2, skip. When you've done one side, you can sort of have a look and take a view if you think it's too much or not enough or whatever. 1, 2, yeah, skip. I just want to show you when I get to that where the 2 corners are joined, because it'll look slightly different. 2, skip. 1, 2, skip. You can also pull this slightly tighter because you're not going to crochet anything else into it. This is your last round. So that's another way to just pull the top edge in. Skip. 1, sorry, I have to count apparently, even though it's only to 2. Skip. If you were a crocheter and you wanted to do something fancier, of course you could. You know, little shells or scallops or something like that around the top. I thought about doing it, but I thought, no, I'll keep it simple for those who don't crochet or haven't crocheted before. 2, skip. 1, 2. So now I've got these quarter spacey things here, and it, you know, just looks a bit different. There aren't stitches on that edge. So if I jump right over and single crocheted into that next corner space, because I think what I'm going to do is a single crochet decrease. Let's, you know, get fancy. So all that means is I go into this, the chain space at the top of this corner, and pull my loop through, and then I don't complete my stitch. I go into this chain space and pull my loop through. So now I've got 3 loops on my hook, and then I go through all those loops together. 1, 2, come on, 3, like that, and that's the single crochet decrease. And then on I go again, doing my 2 single crochets, skip 1. So, you know, that's an optional extra if you just want to fudge the corner. That's a starting chain, that's why it's harder to get into. 2, skip. So I'm going to do that all the way around, on the corners doing the decrease like I just showed you, which you can watch again if it was too quick. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to end off in the same way that I did when I was coming up the sides. And then I'll come back to show you the finished box. So there I am, back to the beginning. I haven't done my decrease yet, so I've single crocheted my last, and then I'm going to do the decrease in the last space just for consistency. So in through there, in through there, pull all the 3 loops through, and then I'm going to slip stitch to my first stitch which is my chain. Pull it through, and then I pull through once more, pull it long, cut my tail, and then pull it all the way through and pull it up snug. And then all I do with those ends then, pull it up snug, pull up snug, there we go. And all I do with those ends is keep them in the box. No, I'll sew them in. So I just would thread them onto a big-eyed needle, and these you can just thread them down that handy ridge. So I'd just go down a little way and then come back round a stitch and maybe come back up in the other direction and snip it off. If I have 2 tails side by side, sometimes I'm even very naughty and I just tie a knot in them. But you see, doing those decreases around the top and skipping the stitches, I've just pulled it in. Can you see? I've just pulled it in a little bit neater. Optional extra. But anyway, there's my box. I'm jolly happy with it. Considering it's only cloth and quite thin wadding and crochet, it's quite sturdy. That's partly because it's small, of course. So I hope you enjoyed that. A bit different again. Next week I think we'll get back to some kind of quilty piecey type thing done in a super wonky way. Thank you so much, Alessandra, for the inspiration. I just love it, and I'm definitely going to do more crochet joining of cloth. I'm just showing you all the 4 sides. I'm so pleased with it. I can just imagine it as a little cashpo, you know, put a little plant in it in a pot without a hole in, you know what I mean, with a little plant. I think that would be super cute. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Alessandra, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more Cloth Dales. Bye bye.